bless America. Gentlemen, we have made it. This is incredible. Rod Beck, Commissioner Beck, Hyrum Erickson, you drove all the way here from Rexburg. Thank you so much for both coming today.
You're welcome.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, good to be here with you.
We're going to make this happen. I have had the pleasure of speaking with both of you about Prop 1. Individually, I've done 6 interviews for the against Prop 1. I had Jake Ball, you, Rod Beck, and Tom Luna, which was fantastic. Hyrum for the pro, right? We had Hyrum, we had Gray Casey, we had Jim Jones. This is the only long format actual conversation that I'm aware of that people have had. I know there have been various forums on it, but ultimately I think just sitting down and having a conversation leads to the best results. So you guys being willing to participate, I very much appreciate it.
Well, Hyrum said we might convince him.
Yeah. He almost gave up before we started.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens, baby.
I'm ready.
All right, sounds good. So, again, the only real thing I care about is let's just try not to interrupt each other. I'm not, and trust me when I say this, not fat checking anybody.
Come on.
Anyway, so look, let's rock and roll. We're talking about Prop 1, open primaries and ranked choice voting. Just the fact that we're sitting here having this conversation presupposes a problem. Right? If there wasn't a problem, or at least a problem in some people's view, we would not be having this conversation. So, Hyrum, you're for Prop 1, which means you have to at least deeply believe that there's an issue with Idaho elections. What is that issue?
So, the problem, as I see it, is the current elections, which is primarily the closed Republican primary, distorts election outcomes. So my premise when it comes to what an election system should do is that the outcomes should accurately represent the preferences of the voters. And that's of all the voters. So if you've got a district that is to the left and they're electing people that are to the right, you probably have a problem with the system. And the same is true. If you have voters that are way over to the right, but you're electing people that are to the left, well, let's look at your system. So the current system in Idaho, which is a closed Republican primary, which means that in order to vote in the Republican primary, you have to be a registered Republican. That matters for a couple reasons. One of the reasons it matters is because many races in Idaho are determined in the Republican primary. In 2022, 50 out of the 105 races for the Idaho legislature were determined in the Republican primary. So there was no general election opposition. I'm going to use my district. I live in District 34, Rexburg, Madison County. We have not had a contested general election for as long as I've been there. And if there has been one, it hasn't been seriously contested. That means that in my district, when we are deciding who will represent us, and we've had some very highly contested Republican primaries in Madison County, that the only people that have any input as to who is representing them in those races are registered Republicans, which means that my neighbor who's a Democrat or my neighbor who's a member of the Libertarian Party, they literally do not matter for those elections. And that has a couple of consequences. One of them is it disenfranchises those people that don't register as Republicans. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is that it incentivizes everybody to join the Republican Party. And as a lifelong Republican, I'm currently a precinct committeeman in Rexburg. It concerns me that we are inviting and incentivizing people that don't have an affinity for our party to join. And we do that by requiring if they want a say in who's running out of Madison County, they've got to join the party. I don't think that's healthy. Lastly, it impacts outcomes, and I'll give you some examples. So most of the races in Madison County in the last decade or so have been between what you would identify, what could reasonably be called the right wing of the party and a moderate Republican. And a lot of those races have been extremely close. Some of them have been determined by dozens of votes. I think the last one, it was either 36 or 63, but it was dozens of votes. And that was the determinative election, because there was nobody running in the general against the Republican. So when you consider that those elections are being determined by those kinds of numbers, there are 112 members of the Constitutional Party in Madison County. By itself, enough to swing an election. 266 Libertarians, 887 Democrats, and 4,618 independent voters in Madison County. That is clearly having those people participate in deciding who's going to represent them will impact the outcome. So my proposition is that the closed Republican primary is distorting outcomes, and it is pulling candidates to the right. And it's resulting in elected officials that do not accurately reflect the preferences of their electorate. And I'll stop there because I just filibustered for a while.
I appreciate it. Rod, what's wrong with what he just said?
Well, almost everything is wrong with what he just said. Number one, elections should be determinative of what the policy is from the state of Idaho. Notice that Hyrum didn't say anything about any policy that he disagrees with. Maybe there are. I don't know. But when you have an elections, it's for someone to determine the policy for the state of Idaho. Now, the problem with what Reclaim Idaho and Hyrum is pushing is that it's deceptive. It's deceptive in that it claims to be, in fact, they even call themselves open primaries, but it's not about open primaries. Let me read you from a Supreme Court decision. This is the state of Idaho Supreme Court in the Labrador versus open primaries. Quote, however, we also rejected Idahoans for open primaries argument that the ballot titles should instead use the term open primary, concluding that the term also fails to adequately describe what the initiative proposes. In other words, it's not about open primaries like Hyrum and his group is claiming. In fact, you need to pose the question, if this is about quote unquote open primaries, does this get us back to 2010, the last time we had a quote open primary? No, it does not. It imposes ranked choice voting. It is so bad, it imposes a jungle primary, just like they have in California. You remember the jungle primary in California, except there's a big difference. Californians aren't even willing to do this kind of a damage to their electoral process. In California, they're a jungle primary because anybody can file and everybody gets to vote in it, correct? Except they only have 2 people emerge from the jungle primary. In Idaho, under this proposal, it's an 18-page initiative that most people didn't even understand. In fact, they were confused because even though the Supreme Court said open primaries argument should instead use the term, concluding that the term also fails to adequately describe what the initiative proposes. they want to use that term, and on their clipboards where they were collecting signatures, where they had people paid for by out-of-state billionaires to put this on the ballot, they were fooling people. It's not about open primaries. At the best, you could call it a jungle primary, because anybody, no matter what the party, can file, and that's what California does. So if you want California to impose itself on Idaho, this starts it, but it's not even as bad as the California system. In the California system, only 2 people emerge from the primary. Could be 2 Democrats, could be 2 Republicans, could be a Libertarian and a Democrat. It's bad, and it's deceptive, because it's not about open primaries. And I would like to hear those that support this tell us the policy that they don't like. What policy does the state of Idaho impose as a result of elections? Because that's what elections are about. You elect people to represent you, to establish the policy for the state of Idaho. I've never heard what Hyrum does not like. Tell me what you don't like about the policies of Idaho.
May I? Got it. And in our original discussion, you were very clear that you felt that this was a deceptive bait and switch.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It is. It's a deceptive bait and switch. There's no question about it.
Understood. And again, I'm not saying you're right or wrong. Well, would it be possible? Would it be possible, though, what Hyrum articulated is that there are a significant, potentially swaying portion of the population that is not capable of participating in the current setup for the primaries in the state of Idaho, be that Libertarian, Independent, Democrat. And you also made it very clear in our first conversation, hey, those people can register as Republicans whenever they want, which is true. They absolutely could, as well as Independent. But it obviously assumed that
nothing prohibits anyone in the state of Idaho from participating in a primary election.
In the absence of registering for that party.
No, they don't have to register for the other parties. It's only the Republican Party that asks them to register to participate in their primary.
Okay.
You can vote in the Democrat primary. You can vote in the Libertarian primary if you want to. And for that matter.
Okay, hang on. Understood. So if you want to participate, as Hyrum pointed out, there are roughly 50 out of the 105 elections that are determined in the Republican primary in the state of Idaho. If that's the case, and the Republican primary requires you register as a Republican, I think that's what he's talking about. And we have plenty of time to get to ranked choice voting. I know you want to hit it hard, and we will. God bless it. But my question is, with regard to what he said, which is, hey, a large, almost 50% of our elections are determined in the Republican primary, yet we restrict people that can participate into that to only those that are registered Republicans. And I think what everybody for Prop 1 is saying is that it is distasteful and disenfranchising that we would require people to join a party to participate.
Well, I simply disagree with that. You're trying to blame the Republican Party for the Democrat Party having not too good of policies that they can attract people. It hasn't always been that way. Idaho is very independent, as you know. In fact, I was the majority leader in the Idaho Senate in 1990. I had 23 Republicans on my side, 19 Democrats. The election of 1990 included Cecil Andrus was elected, Larry Echohawk was the Attorney General. J.D. Williams was elected as the controller. You can go on and on. We had a congressman from eastern Idaho, Richard Stallings. This is a Democrat. You had a congressman from Idaho that was elected, from the District 1 was elected, Larry LaRocco. So there was a lot of people that voted for the Democrats, okay? And it was pretty even. Well, what happened is the Democrats kind of lost their bearing, and because C. Sanders used to run against the National Democrat Party. Well, they don't do that now. Now they compete to see who's the most extreme in Idaho. And that lost the support of the people of Idaho. It's not our fault that the Democrats or other parties don't reflect the views of Idaho. I've yet to hear from Hyrum or anyone else what particular policy is expressed that you disagree with. We don't want to go to a system like they have in Brazil or Australia, where they require you to vote by law. It's not right. We have a good exchange of ideas. We have an exchange of of what we believe to be the proper role of government. It's not our fault as Republicans that the Democrats in Idaho have lost their way and they're out of touch with most of the people in Idaho.
Hyrum, what is wrong with that?
Well, I think what you didn't hear was any argument that the current system doesn't pull the party and thus the candidates and thus the state farther to the right than they would otherwise be. And if we go back to when the Republican primary was closed, it was closed. So let's describe what would happen prior to 2011. And again, I'll use Madison County as an example. So in 2000, let's do 2010. You would have had a Republican primary in which multiple Republicans may have run, and you may have had a Democratic primary, but you may not have. The voters would show up at the voting booth, and they would have the option of taking either a Democratic ballot or a Republican ballot. You couldn't do both, but you could do either. What that means is that if you're a Democrat living in Madison County and there's no contested Democratic primaries in Madison County, that you could then request a Republican ballot and you could vote it. And that is clearly crossover voting. That is a Democrat voting in the Republican primary. But that has, that's not the ideal situation for me. That's not the way I would design it. But that is the way it was prior to 2011. That did have the effect of allowing everyone in that district to participate in those elections if they chose to. When the Republicans closed their primary, they did it specifically because they did not want Democrats and independents pulling the Republican Party to the left. Is that fair, Rod?
No.
How would you describe it then?
Well,
if that wasn't the concern.
I think we should correct exactly what did happen in 2010 and before. Because actually Idaho has had quite a system over the years. In the early 30s, there was a proposal by the legislature that went to the governor's, the 1930s. There was a proposal that went to the governor's desk to even have a primary, and he vetoed it. The governor did. He vetoed even having a primary, and he gave us his reason. You read his veto message, and he gave us his reason. The government shouldn't be at all involved in party politics, and this gets us involved in party politics, and he vetoed it. Well, then it changed, and they used to have a convention for a while, and they had a partial convention clear up until about 1972. Well, 1972 is when they went to the system that was in place from 72 to 2010. And as you described it, that's not what happened in the primaries in 2010 or before. On top of that, you're not proposing to go back to the 2010 level. You're proposing a jungle primary, which
Right.
doesn't even
But
doesn't even look like a primary.
The question is, what is the problem that we are purporting to solve? So I'm trying to describe why I assert that the current system with the closed primary is creating election results that are not representative of the voters in the district.
Okay, if you say that, I'll first correct how you described it. You never went up to the ballot, up to the election office and said, "Give me a Democrat ballot" or "Give me a Republican." That's not how it worked. How it worked was you were handed a ballot, and then you had to choose in the privacy of your ballot booth. Well, I'm going to vote in the Democrat primary today, but you did it anonymously. That's how you're going to vote. That, or I'm going to vote in the Republican. But you had to, and if you crossed over and voted for one of the other parties that you picked you're going to vote on, then your ballot was disqualified because you had to choose which one you're going to vote. That's how that actually worked. It wasn't, here's your Republican ballot, here's your Democrat. That's not how it worked. It was privately. And again, it gets back to the question of, I'm perfectly comfortable with the policies that our legislature and our government produces. You haven't suggested that you're not. And you're trying to change the whole outcome of elections. And you're saying, oh, you're leaning people to the right. You could have leaned them a little further to the left. You've openly said, I love my Madison County legislators. Okay. So what policy has the Idaho legislature and the governor proposed or enacted into law that you don't like that was a result of this kind of a primary system? That's the question.
Well, if I may.
Yeah.
I've interviewed a lot of people on this. I have not focused on specific policies that people are disliking, and the people talking to me conveying why they're for it against it have not largely conveyed that this is a policy driven necessarily, and it's not necessarily a policy driven issue. What they have said is that the current system produces a disenfranchised voter base. And you have a lot of people focus on Democrat versus Republican, right? Like that's totally fair. And Rod, as you pointed out, hey, if the Democrats can't field someone, that's on them. What of the independents?
They have every right to vote in the general election, and everybody in the state. There's over 1 million registered voters in Idaho right now, if you knew that or not. Over 1 million registered voters. Any one of them have the right to choose to participate in a party election if they want to. Now, they'll have to register as a Republican if they want to choose the Republican policy or Republican candidate. But where it actually matters is the general election. The general election is when you choose your policy holders. And maybe people haven't focused on the policy because they didn't want to, because they can't win if they focus on the policy. Tell me the policy that would change that you're not happy. You say that, oh, it's turning too far to the right. Well, what policy do you not like that the state of Idaho? How did we get turned too far to the right? Which policy is the bad policy that you don't like?
Rod, I legitimately don't understand the question. You're asking me to look at every statute that the legislature has passed since 2012 and identify for you the ones that I don't like?
No, I'm not asking you to do that.
Hang on.
I don't want to.
No, you're good. Listen, my heart's beating too. It's great, Hyrum, but let's just take our time and try to sift through this.
This is a question of making elections representative of voters. I think, Rod, what you're trying to do is have me as a Republican pick some issue with which I disagree that our Republican governor and our Republican supermajority has passed, if I were going to guess, so that you can then say, see, Hyrum's not a real Republican. But it's not a question of a particular legislative outcome. Our legislators deal with hundreds of bills that deal with hundreds of issues, and they are supposed to be representative of their individual districts. And right now, often they are not. And that is not a healthy place for the state to be, nor is it healthy for the response to that to be everybody should join the Republican Party. We don't want everybody to join the Republican Party.
Oh, I would. I think that'd be fine if they all wanted to be Republicans. But still, you are saying, in fact, that was and you just repeated it. It's not representative of the people. So the legislature or the governor is turning too far to the right. but yet you won't say, well, what have they done? What policy do you disagree with? Because that's how you determine. How do you know they're turning too far to the right? What are you saying creates them to be too far? You're just making a supposition. Oh, they're all too far to the right. Tell me how. How is Idaho too far to the right? Tell me that, because that's based on the outcomes of the current system. It's the current system that we have. That's how we get the legislature that we have. That's how we got our governor. That's how we got all of our constitutional officers in the state. That's how we elect everybody in the county. Even, what particular policy would you like to see changed? Because you're saying, oh, well, we're too far to the right. We're not adequately representative of the people, but you don't know that. That's just a supposition of yours and a supposition of Reclaim Idaho.
No, I do know that.
How do you know that?
Because in Madison County, again, we are having the determinative elections decided by dozens of votes, while thousands of voters can't participate in that election. So do I know that those election results are not reflective of the will of the voters in Madison County? Absolutely.
Absolutely. And yet you won't name one policy that's incorrect. Not one.
If I may, I believe what Hyrum is saying is that the elected officials, it's not the job that they're doing. It's not the policies that they're bringing forward. It's not the votes that they're taking. Perhaps it is, but what I hear him saying over and over is, hey, the elected representatives, those who are selected to address and bring forth policies, those people are not being picked by everyone in Madison County. They're being picked by not predominantly, in some cases exclusively registered Republicans.
So Matt, let me give. It's not exactly a policy, but it is a behavior that I think is determinative of, or at least useful to look at here. The closed Republican primary causes candidates and thus legislators, because in a 2-year cycle, you're constantly a candidate, to focus primarily on making sure that their voters show up in that closed Republican primary. Because again, it's not just that only Republicans can vote in that primary. It's also that the primary is very low turnout. About 35% of Republicans vote in that primary. 35% of Republicans equates to 20% of all voters, which means if only 20% of the voters are participating in that particular election, you can win with 11%. So if you get that 11% to come out and vote for you in that Republican primary, you're then uncontested in the general, you coast through. So what do candidates do? What do legislators do? They focus on activating that 11%. And how do you do that? How do you activate your base? You make them angry and you make them scared. And you absolutely see that behavior consistently in the legislature. You see legislators that are not interested in the meat and potatoes, everyday issues of Idahoans, but instead they are focused on wedge issues and on culture wars. And that behavior is incentivized by this closed primary because all they need is that 11% to show up and vote for them. And Prop 1 does solve that, but we're not actually talking about Prop 1 yet. We're still describing the problem.
Rod, what's wrong with that?
Well, I just reject that notion. I mean, I've asked how many times now? 3, 4 times. Give me a problem that's being solved, and that's all that is supposition. Hyrum is just making that up, or it's his opinion, but not an actual policy. Tell me, did the legislature pass this, or the governor signed this that you disagree with? Not a single thing. And you've had all this time to think about it. And that's what elections are about. Elections are about deciding who's going to be representing you in the legislature and forming policy. That's what it's about. Now, there may be some wedge vote. I don't know. I don't think so. I've seen a lot of people, they don't talk about wedge issues. Some of them do, truly, but that's not exclusive to the Republicans.
Absolutely not.
I think it's kind of true with several different candidates.
Absolutely.
That's just the way. And we live in a unique time right now, but it's always been sort of, if you look at some of the elections in the past 100 years, 200 years, we are really lucky compared to what they used to do years ago. Truly. But I want to hear now. I don't want to continue talking about the open primaries because it's not open primaries. That's a deceptive term. It's not an open primary. You guys keep saying that, but it's a deceptive term according to the Idaho Supreme Court. You shouldn't be using that term. But we're going to keep talking about this. Hyrum has his view, and his view is that it affects policy. However, I haven't heard what policy that he disagrees with. He tells us that the primary system as it currently is creates three wonderful legislators from Madison County that he loves, right?
Right now?
Right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with my legislators.
There you go. And elections do matter. Policy is formed, and policy is formed by people who present their views to the electorate, and they have to win in a general election. Now, Hyrum talks about 11, 12%, but they have to win in a general election. That's when it makes the difference. I don't want to keep talking about this area because this is not what is real. Because, see, it's deceptive because the Reclaim Idaho people, they chose this moniker. They call themselves Open Primaries Incorporated, but they're not about open primaries. They're not even taking it back to the 2010 where you think it was a great system. That's not what they're doing. They're creating a jungle primary, which is a California system, except it's even worse than California. California, they only have 2 people emerge from the jungle primary. Idaho's going to have 4, and then that's going to extend into 16 or 18 candidacies, and now we're getting into ranked choice voting again. But that's what I want to talk about. I don't know why we keep talking about open and closed primaries because Hyrum and I are never going to agree. Hyrum says it turns everybody to the right, but yet he has failed to articulate even one issue that it turns people to the right that's resulted in policy from this state.
If I may. And again, Hyrum, if you want to respond, that's okay.
We're good.
Okay. Question for you, Rod. When you and I spoke, which, again, fantastic conversation, you articulated a right to associate and a right to not associate.
That's in the Constitution, and that's how we won the lawsuit because we had to sue the state of Idaho to get the proposition that's in front of us right now. It's the freedom of association.
Okay.
Right.
With this in mind, Prop 1 would allow people that are not registered Republicans to run in the primary, in the primary as Republicans. That's accurate, correct?
No.
No. I screwed this one up. Okay. Who can run if say I'm an independent and I want to run if say Prop 1 comes to pass and I want to run as a Republican, do I have to register as a Republican to get the R next to my name?
I don't know. You'll have to ask the proponents of that. I think that you can. I think you have to be registered to put the R after your name, I believe, but I'm not positive on that because it's 18 pages of legislation that even repeals some legislation. Because Idaho has actually passed a law that prohibits ranked choice voting, and this repeals that.
The reason I brought that up is because Tom Luna had made a point about taking away the meaning of the R in front of somebody's name or after somebody's name in the primary, and that they would confuse voters. And if that's an inaccuracy, then I apologize, but let's go to Hyrum. Is that?
So
you have to look at the law.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know the answer to this question because I've had
the answer is Matt's an idiot, and I'm likely screwed it up.
It is not. You have accurately stated what other people have said, but they're wrong. So this is
Was I right?
were you right?
Yeah. Do you have to
Oh
have
my
an
God.
R? Do you have an R? Do you have to be a registered Republican?
Yes.
In the jungle primary.
So
One for Rod. There we go.
Here's the language from the proposed statute. This is in the Declaration of Candidacy. It's it would be section 34-704A. Such declaration must declare the office for which the candidate seeks election, the political party with which the candidate is registered as affiliated, or whether the candidate prefers a nonpartisan or undeclared designation placed after the candidate's name on the ballot. So if I am registered as a Republican, I could run as unaffiliated. I could not run as a Democrat. If I am a registered Democrat, I could run as unaffiliated. I could not run as a Republican. I can't have the R by my name.
If I'm a registered independent, do I have to run or do I go straight to general, or can I run in the primaries as a?
Independents are not treated any differently than someone with an R or a D after their name.
Okay. So
And
no. Again, so this is an important thing because it was my understanding, and thank you for taking the time to clear this up.
So,
but
and independents are actually called in the law unaffiliated.
right,
yeah.
So
Right.
it's the same thing.
So Matt, I think one thing that we haven't done yet, because the three of us have had this conversation multiple times, is we haven't actually described what Prop 1 would do yet. Can I take 2 minutes and lay it out?
Rod, yeah. And again, I do absolutely want to come back to the right to associate because it's something that you really brought up. And again, I screwed this little nuance up. Not even a little nuance, a big nuance.
And apparently you've been given the incorrect information because as I thought, it's been a while since I actually read the proposed statute. You do have to be a registered Republican to put an R after your name on the jungle primary.
Understood. Okay. So again, thank you for your help on this. Hit me with it.
Okay. Proposition 1 proposes 2 changes. The first is a nonpartisan open primary. So everybody, regardless of their party affiliation, is listed on the same ballot. So if you're running for governor, everybody running for governor is listed on the same ballot, regardless of which party they are running in. That the voters come, they pick their favorite candidate. The top 4 candidates, regardless of party, move on to the general election. In Idaho, the reality is that particularly for statewide offices, you're almost certainly going to end up with 2 or 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat. You might end up with 2 Republicans, a Libertarian, and a Democrat. But it's going to be multiple Republicans in the general election. And as soon as you put multiple people of the same party in a general election, you create a risk for vote splitting. Because if you've got 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat, you can easily imagine a scenario where the Republicans split the vote, the Republican vote, and a Democrat gets elected with 30%. As I said at the beginning, my proposition is that election results should reflect the preferences of the voters. And that would clearly be the wrong result. So what do we do to solve that problem? We used what's called an instant runoff or ranked choice voting. Rather than just voting for your preferred candidate, you vote for your preferred candidate first, and then you rank the other candidates. So I've got 4 candidates. This is my preferred candidate, then this guy, then this person, then that person is last. When votes are counted, the first thing you do is you count everybody's first place votes. And if somebody gets more than 50%, then that person is the winner. In Alaska, the vast majority of state legislative races were determined on that first vote. There was no runoff. If nobody gets to 50%, then you take whoever was last, you remove them, And if you're a voter who voted for that person, then your next choice counts. And that's it. If then nobody gets to 50% with 3 candidates, then you remove the bottom candidate, and then it's just 2, and somebody will get to 50%. That person then is the winner. I'll let Rod talk about why this is all terrible, and then I can talk about why it's awesome.
Okay, first off, and don't worry, Rod, we're coming to you why it's terrible. Accurate representation of Prop 1, yay, nay?
Well, yeah, he accurately described what Prop 1 does, and he give you the correct version that you have to be a registered Republican to have your R after your name, and you have to be a registered Democrat apparently to have the D after your name.
And again, that's my fault.
Well, that's all right. That's all right.
But if I may now, unless you have something else you want to say about what it actually is, I want to hear about the right to associate, because this was a big consideration, it's my understanding, in the creation of closed primaries, which is, hey, if we're Republicans, we should be allowed to mingle as Republicans, make a determination as far as which Republican candidate we think we should pick. You described as a quarterback for a team. It's like, hey, I'm going to pick this guy. He's going to represent us, and we're going to put him in the game and, hope to get him to win. So talk to me about that.
Well, it is in fact, that's the reason that we tried to get the legislature, the party did, to pass a bill that would follow the rules, because the rule of the party was, as it was passed in 2007, I think it was, when the rule was finally passed, that in order to vote in a Republican primary, you had to be a registered Republican. And the legislature continued to ignore that. And the only way that we could get it into law was to sue, and we sued based on the freedom of association, because the freedom of association also includes the freedom to not associate. And the Supreme Court is very clear on this, that a political party is a private party, any political party, and you have the right to say, we don't want other parties interfering in who we choose as our candidates. There's multiple decisions. You know that. You're a lawyer. That's what the law. That's what the Supreme Court has said multiple times. In fact,
absolutely.
And so we went to a federal court, Judge Lynn Windmill, not what I'd call a classical conservative. He agreed with us. He agreed with us that the freedom of association is tantamount. You can impose the freedom of association. We went through a trial, and there were some interesting things out of that trial. You talk about independence, you talk about unaffiliated. We had to prove to the court that Democrats were actually voting in our primary, and we did. We did it through we hired a pollster to take a poll of all the people. In fact, in order to even be in the sample, you had to have voted in 2 of the last 3 primaries. We just wanted to talk to primary voters because that's who we had. That was, and we found out we also had some more questions that we put in the poll. When somebody told us, "Well, yeah, I voted in the Republican primary." Well, are you a Republican? Well, yeah. Then we asked them a series of questions, and we found out what their true leanings were. Like, did you support Hillary Clinton? That type of thing. And we found out that of the unaffiliated people, almost about 65 to 70% of the unaffiliated people that voted in the Republican primary actually leaned Democrat. That's what we found out. And that was our supposition. We thought that was happening, but we couldn't prove it. So we proved it to the court, and the court ruled that the Idaho law relative to the Republicans was unconstitutional because it denied us our freedom of association. And that's when the law that's currently in place had to be passed by the legislature. We wrote the law, and the legislature passed it. And it's currently in the law, and it's proved immensely popular with most people that are partisan. Most people, you go to a convenience store and you go to almost anywhere, and you say, "Are you going to vote in the primary?" And they'll say, "I'm not interested in that." And they say that because they don't want to bother with learning about the various candidates. But they say, no, I'm not going to vote that. I will vote in the general election, but I'm not going to bother with the primary. So it is not our fault that there's not a lot of people, not whole high percentage, like Hyrum points out, votes in the Republican primary. But it's still the freedom of association, and we have the freedom to not associate. We don't want Democrats participating in choosing our candidates. It's as simple as that. Under this jungle primary system, it puts the whole thing in a mess because it's even worse than California. California has jungle primary, as you know. They did have a closed primary, but they went to this jungle primary, but only 2 people emerged that goes to the general election. This highfalutin case they've got now, they want 4 people to emerge. Can you imagine how onerous that's going to be? I think it's going to cause problems with security. I think it's going to cause problems with how do you even know that you have a fair election? Because then it has to be computers that calculate all this thing. We have a thing in Ada County called Ballot Verifier. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, absolutely. It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. First in the nation to do that. And other counties are calling us saying, hey, how do you do that? And it's not even that expensive to implement. How are you going to use a ballot verifier when you have as many as, if you have 16 to 18 races in any one county, and you have 4 people emerge? What's that going to be? 60 or 70 little bubbles you're going to have to fill out? It's going to take you 25 or 30 minutes to fill out the ballot.
Okay. And with Prop 1, the right to associate is no more. Is that your feeling? That it betrays or screws up what you guys fought for in 2011?
Well, of course, because the party won't be choosing who is our nominee in the general election. Exactly. Because it's going to be a jungle primary. There's going to be 4 people emerge. And there's really bad. It's not just the party. It's not just the Democrat Party. It's not just the Republican Party. It's the Democrat Party. It's unaffiliated people. Because, see, if you want to be unaffiliated or if you want to be a different party, you can file and you don't even go through this process. An unaffiliated is automatically on a ballot if they want to run as an unaffiliated or an independent, if you will.
Gotcha.
They get on a ballot. They lose that right with this proposition. They lose the right to be on the ballot in the general election unless they're one of the top 4.
Roger. Hyrum, right to associate. What do you think?
I think it is a good thing, and I have no problems whatsoever with Judge Windmill's 2011 decision. It accurately reflects the Supreme Court precedent that he was bound by. It continues to be good law today. It is not impacted in any way by Proposition 1. And here's why. What the right of association does is it says that Republicans get to choose who the Republican flag bearer is. And Democrats are entitled to create any rules they want related to how they pick their candidate that they're going to support. It does not give any private organization, be it the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or the Rotarians or the Elks Club, the right to control who can be on the ballot. And right now, the Republican Party, the Republican primary voters decide who shows up on that ballot. We don't just decide who we as Republicans want to support. We decide who shows up on the ballot. And I'll use a race from up in North Idaho. Scott Herndon and Jim Woodward. I don't know either of the gentlemen. As far as I know, I've never met either of them. A hotly contested race 2 years ago, another hotly contested race this year. I don't see any reason why that race between those 2 people shouldn't be determined by everybody in that district. And there's nothing about the right of association that says that race has to be determined in a Republican primary, which then prevents the loser from being in the general. That would mean that the members of the Constitutional Party who might support Scott Herndon don't get a chance to. It would mean that those independents who might support Scott Herndon don't get a chance to. It would mean that those independents that might support Jim Woodward don't get a chance to. This allows the party to decide in any way that we want who we support. We could hold a caucus. We could run our own primary, pay for it ourselves. And we then identify who we as Republicans support, and then we go spend money, and we go knock doors, and we go put out signs to support our Republican candidate. And there's nothing about Prop 1 that would prevent us from doing that. In fact, it would allow us to do it in whatever way we wanted without having to worry about state statutes that right now restrict how Republicans run their primary. It gets the state out of party politics. And to my mind, that is a good thing.
Rod, would you like to? Because I want to give you your day in the sun with the ranked choice voting coming up, but I don't want to rush. So,
well, what Hyrum failed to tell you is that Herndon won 2 years ago and Jim Woodward won this time. People swing back and forth on their support or lack of support.
But it's not people; it's just the Republicans.
And it is not the Republicans' fault that the Democrats don't put up legitimate candidates or candidates that can receive the support of the people. It's not our fault that they don't do that. They could do that, and there's been some cases where it would have been very competitive in what you call non-competitive races. They could have done that many times. They've chosen not to. It isn't the Republicans' fault that the Democrats or the independents or the libertarians or whoever else, if they don't put up a candidate that has the support of the majority of the people in their district. It's not our fault that they do that. It almost sounds like Hyrum wants to go to an Australian or a Brazilian system where it forces everybody to vote. I don't think that's right. That takes away your freedom of association and your freedom of choice. You shouldn't. It's not our fault that they don't have good candidates or that they even have policies that reflect it. Again, Hyrum has failed to point out any policies that he'd like to see changed. Not a single one. And that's what we're talking about with elections. You're talking about policies that will be impacted in the state of Idaho.
Understood.
Can I don't want to give the impression that this is a uniquely Idaho problem, or that this is a problem that would be solved if the Democrats ran better candidates. Or that their brand hadn't been toxic in Idaho for the last 20 years, because that's not the case. It's not an Idaho problem. You can imagine a scenario where there's a state, in fact, you can find this, there is a state that is highly competitive, 50% Democrat, 50% Republican, split right down the middle, both of them with closed primaries. In that scenario, what you're going to get is, because the primary is a low turnout election, and the Republicans that show up in the primary are going to be those farthest to the right, and the Democrats that show up in the primary are going to be those farthest to the left, that you end up with a Democrat that is way off to the left. My wife would find that profoundly entertaining because I give driving instructions. I'm like, turn left. Yeah.
God bless you guys. Thanks for coming.
You got to have your help.
This is great. This is great.
So the Democrats, because the people showing up at the Democratic primary are the most passionate and thus tend to be the farthest to the left. The Republicans showing up at the Republican primary are also the most passionate, tend to be the farthest to the right. And what you end up with is a Democrat way to the left, a Republican way to the right, and the 60% of the voters that then show up at the general election to vote have these two candidates, neither of which are palatable to them. What they wanted was somebody who would focus on solving their problems rather than activating the bases in the primaries. Closed primaries, party primaries in general, but in particular closed primaries, are naturally problematic because they incentivize candidates to run to the extremes. And this problem will continue to exist even if Democrats become competitive in this state again. And I would suggest that if we as Republicans don't solve this problem, Democrats will become competitive in this state again. Because as a party, we are forgetting how to talk to the majority of Idaho voters. We are focusing so heavily on that 11% that you need to win Republican primaries that you are forgetting even your moderate Republicans, much less your independents. And we are creating space that ought not to be there as Republicans for a resurgent Democratic Party. That's going to happen in the next few years if we don't solve the problem of where we're at right now.
Rod, I actually have heard a couple people say, hey, we're pushing hard right. And again, I don't know if they're right or wrong, but I've heard people say, hey, we're pushing hard right. And that's pretty much what Hyrum said. What do you think about this?
Oh, I reject that notion.
Talk to me about that.
I reject that notion, and primarily because I am familiar with, I'm friends with a lot of members of the Idaho legislature. I know them. And there are people as divergent as you have in the public, in the legislature, that are Republican. Most of the Democrats accurately represent their district. For instance, right here, you are District 19.
Correct.
Right here. Well, District 19 is the most Democrat district in the state, not because of where you live. It's because of the north end of Boise. The reapportionment happened to move out here and put you in there. So you're not accurately reflected. If he wanted to really do what he's talking about, he'd say, well, maybe we got to change that reapportionment process because you don't get representation because all the Democrats live in the north end and they actually elect all the people, closed primary or no. So I reject that notion because policymakers, legislators, and other officials that run on a particular, they respond to what is happening in their district, and they still do. They still respond to what's happening in the district. Have you seen, for instance, our education budget take a dive? No. We have a strong education budget. How about just pick an issue? Pick an issue that the vast majority of Idahoans support, and you'll find that's what goes on in the Idaho legislature. So this notion that, it's going to turn everybody to the right, it's going to turn everybody to the left, I don't buy that because you have, the freedom of association. I want to pick my candidates that I think will best represent the political philosophy that I've held. That's who I want to elect. And that's by far the largest percentage of people in the legislature. They represent their people. You see that right here in Ada County. You see it over in eastern Idaho. They represent the people that live in their district, no matter if they didn't get out and vote for them. Because if they didn't, look at the Herndon and the what's his name, Jim's case.
Yeah.
Jim Woodward. Look at that case. Herndon made a few mistakes apparently, and the people up in the district said, "Hey, that's too far for us."
But
and so it's not going to happen. It's not going to be a panacea. You're not going to have, this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread because everybody's going to get all you would see is confusion. You'd see, in fact, Maine, they have ranked choice. There's only two states that have ranked choice voting, Maine and Alaska. And Alaska has an initiative on the ballot right now to repeal their ranked choice voting. They're so irritated at it. Well, I talked to some people that have been to Maine, and they say, it's really strange because we do have this ranked choice system, and candidates hardly even take any issues. They just, they kind of make themselves known. Where the big money comes in is out-of-state interests come in and they spend a boatload of money on their issues that the candidates have nothing to do with. They just maybe point to one candidate or another. Yeah, this is the candidate we'd like to see. So it takes away the individual campaigns that we see in Idaho, because it's about, think about the process when you have 16 to 18 candidates on the ballot and you have four of the 16 to 18 proceed to the general election. How many is that? 65, 70 little bubbles you'll have to fill out. And then a lot of the bubbles you fill out, your vote's disenfranchised. You lose your vote if you're a guy that you voted for doesn't get a majority of the vote to start out with. Then your vote's disqualified if you didn't put in second, third, or fourth place. I think that is a bad system. You have to have some sort of a computer system, and then the cost of it. Secretary of State McGrain said it's going to cost $25 to $40 million. We could pay for a lot of education with that $25 to $40 million. We could build a few bridges. We could do a lot of things. But to do that, because just think right here right in Eagle. Now, you're not Eagle City is hooked up for the legislature with Gem County. Okay. Well, we have two different voting processes, two different election processes. Ada County has an election process. Gem County has their election process. Well, what's going to happen with the Gem County? It's going to take 2 or 3 days after a general election before you even know the results, because you're going to have people voting in Gem County for the legislature, people voting in Ada County, in Eagle for the legislature. Well, how are they going to know? How are they going to know who's going to represent them? Because you have to combine the two with two different systems. That's why it's going to cost $25 to $40 million to actually count the votes. It's a bad system. It's a solution in search of a problem. There is no problem now. Most people are fairly happy with the results of the legislature and the executive.
With regard to ranked choice voting, which is where we finally have arrived.
I'm so happy.
Can I do one thing before we dove into?
Absolutely. And Rod, we're coming right back to you. Don't you worry.
Yep. The idea that it is a fine system and everybody are happy is happy with it. That's just not the case. And if you want a data point to show that, look at the rise of initiatives over the past 10 years. I'm not a member of Reclaim Idaho, but they have identified places where the majority of Idaho voters are separated from the majority of Idaho legislators, and they have gone out, collected signatures, and then passed initiatives on issues that the legislature won't act on.
That is a lit ring. Whose
Sorry,
ring is that?
That's mine.
You want to crap that real fast? I know this is a working day for both of you guys, so I appreciate it.
So in the last 10 years, since the Republicans closed their primaries, you have seen a marked rise in the number of initiatives. That is because the closed Republican primary is creating space between the voters in the state and their legislators, because it is, like I've said, polling legislators to the right. And regardless of what we may think about the policies in any one of those initiative drives, and I'm not a member of Reclaim Idaho. I've never associated with the group, but they have been highly effective in, one, gathering the signatures, and then two, the people of Idaho are voting for them. And the reason they're voting for them, when it won't pass in the legislature, because all of those legislators know that if they vote for it, they're going to get primaried. Because these are things that are popular with the majority of Idaho voters, but not popular with the majority of the voters that vote in that closed Republican primary. That's why the initiatives are a thing now when they weren't 20 years ago. And unless we fix this, it will continue to be a thing, which I don't love, because I'm not a huge fan of direct democracy, which is ironic given my position on this initiative. But it's not ideal. We should have representatives that accurately represent their districts, and then the initiatives that you're seeing will disappear because they won't be needed.
Okay.
I disagree with that fully because there has been swings. In fact, this is probably before Hyrum's time, but in 1994, there was an initiative on the ballot limiting property taxes to 1% of valuation. Do you remember that?
I do not.
There you go. It was in 1994.
I was a junior in high school.
There you go. But you're saying that, it's only been the recent years. There's only been 2 or 3 initiatives actually make it to the ballot because it is so difficult in Idaho. It should be more difficult in my mind. But one was the Medicaid expansion. That's where Reclaim was involved in Medicaid expansion. Now there's this one. Other than that, there hasn't been any other initiative.
The school funding that was going to be there.
They pulled it, though.
Failed it. That's right.
And why did they pull it? Because the legislature responded. They pulled it because the legislature responded.
They responded to the initiative.
They responded to
The fact that it was going to get passed.
Either way, it wasn't on the ballot.
Sure.
It wasn't on the ballot, no matter why. You can point fingers at why, but Reclaim Idaho pulled it because it wasn't on the ballot. It was not on the ballot. Nobody voted on it. So there's only been 2. One of them is Medicaid expansion, and they didn't tell the truth about this. They said, you're going to get free Medicaid. You're going to get free medical care. It's not going to cost the state of Idaho anything. That's been a colossal lie because it's costing the Idaho taxpayers literally hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's costing federal taxpayers way more because of the ratio. And then this one, it's a deceptive scheme to put some. It's a deceptive scheme to put ranked choice voting in because it's not about open primaries, and they lied about it right on their clipboards where they're out of state paid signature gatherers got signatures. They would stand in front of the libraries and stand in front of the post office and say, "Do you support open primaries? Sign here. We'll eliminate them." That's not true because it doesn't eliminate open primary. It creates a problem, and open primaries does not. It's not an open primary. It's a jungle primary.
Okay. First off, per the Medicaid expansion, I actually had a really, really great long conversation with Representative John Vander Wouda.
He knows all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, to your point, if people want to understand more about what that has done to the state of Idaho or the budget, check out that conversation. Now,
it's terrible what that's done.
So we move on now to the ranked choice voting system. Now I have had
been talking about it a little bit.
A little bit. I have had several conversations with Secretary of State Phil McGrain, and he has articulated that there are a number of problems in comparing our system to the Alaska system, specifically that Alaska doesn't have counties. We have counties here. So, Rod, you pointed out, hey, Gem versus Ada County, we would have to figure out a different way of sharing information between that. Right now, the machines, let's say in Ada County or other counties in the state of Idaho, are not set up to tabulate ranked choice voting. Upgrading all of that equipment is part of the price tag that he's articulated, the 25 to, I think he said $40 million. There is a consideration of, hey, one person, one vote, all of these things. Open primaries, Prop 1 does say open primaries, and it does have this distinction of tabulation, which does not have an inconsequential price tag. Hyrum.
So let me first address the open primaries question and the use of the term. You can always argue about definitions. An open primary is a primary in which you don't have to be registered with a particular party to participate. This is a primary in which you don't have to be registered with a particular party to participate. This is an open primary. Now, what the Supreme Court said, and I can give you the exact sentence if you want.
No, that's not where they said it. They said it right there. You don't want to read that portion.
I know what I'm looking for, man. I've read this before.
Well, there's two cases there, so
Okay.
you might get confused.
So what they do is they say that Idaho, we also observed that Idaho previously had a true, quote, open primary system, i.e. a system in which a voter could vote in the primary election without prior registration as a member of a political party. Then they go on to say that
You can use the highlighted portions.
okay.
This is the wildest Monday I've had in a long time.
that-
I just want you guys to know that.
We're good. I'm glad you're having fun.
Yeah.
I think I've almost got Hyrum convinced.
You might.
While other states may have used the term, so they're recognizing that open primaries is a term used for what we're doing here, we conclude that it is not distinctive in Idaho, given Idaho's history. So they're not saying it's not an open primary. What they're saying is, given Idaho's past history of a system called an open primary, it is not sufficiently distinctive that we're going to put it on the short or long ballot title. They don't say it's not accurate. They don't say we can't use it. The Supreme Court said we're not going to include it in the ballot title, and it's not in the ballot title. But it is an accurate description of what this proposition does. This is an open primary. There are different types of open primaries. One of them is an open partisan primary, where you would allow a political party would let anybody come in and vote for it, regardless of their party. That's not this. This is a nonpartisan open primary. It's perfectly accurate and not in any way inconsistent with the Supreme Court's decision.
Okay.
However, just let me correct that. The Supreme Court said you could not use the term open primary on the actual initiative itself.
On the title.
Not just the title,
No, all he's doing right
the
there.
initiative itself. The language on the bottom of each initiative page gives the title. Can you use that? Can you use the term open primary?
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say the title. It's this descriptor here.
Let me
That's
read
the
this.
long title
However,
and the short
we
title.
also rejected Idahoans for Open Primaries' argument that the ballot titles should instead use the term open primaries, concluding that the term also fails to adequately describe what the initiative proposes. Supreme Court.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. Ranked choice voting. We're going to have to merge counties that are not set up for ranked choice voting. There's a possibility that a large number of counties would have to upgrade their equipment in order to count these things. Doing a hand count audit or something of that nature where we go back, because Phil McGrain was articulating, hey, look, we send out teams of people to go and audit regularly. That's a far more laborious process with human counting. Talk to me about this.
So the issue with the counties exists now in the sense that legislative districts don't follow county lines, and obviously there's a number of legislative districts that include 2 or more counties. And when that happens, sometimes you will get election results showing up for these precincts that are in a particular district. And then later that night or the next day, you'll get election results from another district or from other precincts that are in the same district in a different county. That happens now. There is, I don't think there's any question that this is a different system. And any time there is a different system, your clerks are going to have to learn how to do it. We are fortunate right now to have an exceptionally competent Secretary of State. And every interaction I have ever had with my county clerks or the county clerks in other counties is that they're really good at their jobs. Alaska does this. Maine does this. Cities in Utah do this. I do not see any reason to believe that Idaho's Secretary of State and Idaho's clerks are any less competent than anybody else is.
Rod, if I may just ask one question, and again, you will absolutely get all the time. Let me rephrase the question to you then, Hyrum. Again, just like I asked in the beginning, there has to be a problem for us to get a solution. What's the problem? There are two parts to this, right? The open primary, or however you want to call the primary system that we've been modifying, and then a modification of vote tabulation. Why go from our standard vote tabulation right now to ranked choice voting? What's the problem that this is solving?
So there's two. The primary problem that it is solving is what I described initially, which is the vote splitting problem. You cannot have a top four primary and then have a first past the post, which is what they call just highest vote total wins in the general election. Vote splitting is bad. And elections, we should not, elections that are decided because of vote splitting should be avoided. And you shouldn't, if you've got more than two candidates, you've got the possibility of vote splitting. The instant runoff is designed primarily to solve that problem. Now, it also has some other benefits. One of them is that it guarantees that the candidate that wins has a broad support in the community. It means that you can't win with 20% or 30% of your district loving you to death, but the other 70% hating your guts. You have to have broad support because you've got to get over that 50% threshold. That changes the way people campaign. It changes the way that people talk. It changes the incentives for candidates. Rather than focusing on firing up your base, rather than focusing on making the people that already love you angry and afraid so that they show up to vote for you, you focus on talking to the majority of voters about the problems that they think are important.
Rod, I did not mean to stop you from responding. A little bit more clear issue articulated. Hit me with it.
Well, I don't think it was a more clear articulation because Hyrum mentioned, well, we have multiple counties now, which we do. We have multiple counties. And in fact, in Ada County, District, I think 23 has Kuna, which is Ada County, has all of Owyhee County and a big part of Canyon County. And right now, all we do is we wait. Owyhee County turns in their votes. Canyon County in that area turns in their votes, and they're tabulated. It's done. But under this jungle primary that results in 4 people, there's no way you can actually do that. That's the reason that Phil McGrain has said this is going to cost anywhere from $25 to $40 million, is because there's no way you can actually do that. And is it going to be a fair election? Is it going to be an election without any kind of hanky-panky going on? We don't know, because you're going to have computers doing it. You can't physically count all these ballots. For instance, we have a ballot verifier. How's that going to work? You can't pull up all the ballots in Owyhee County and in Canyon County because they don't have the ballot verifier. And ballot verifier is what proves that the elections were counted all properly. This is not fair for candidates. It's not good for the people. It is a bad system all the way around.
Hyrum.
I'm not aware of any reason why you can't use ballot verifier in this. In Alaska, they have all of their data right there. And every ballot is there and available just like it is in Ada County. There is nothing about the nature of this ballot. It's a piece of paper that you're filling in a bubble sheet, which is then scanned. That is the same thing we do now. There is nothing about that that is any less secure. If the concern is that it's computers, if you can hack a computer now, you can hack a computer then. There's nothing about this ranked choice voting that is less secure than the system we're using now. It is. I will concede that it would be more labor intensive to do a hand recount. But again, it's not impossible. It's just more labor intensive.
I don't think they even know how to do a hand recount when you got 4 people on the ballot and you try to figure out, well, now which one drops off this time? Did the same amount a person drop off in Ada County or in Owyhee County? You don't know this. This is an unfair election. And by the way, just so you know what ballot verifier is, it is a copy of the ballot that anybody in the county can go look at.
Yep.
It's only available in Ada County. It's not available anywhere else in the state right now.
Right.
And it's
brilliant.
In fact, anywhere else in the whole United States, a lot of counties are copying us because it's not that expensive to even prepare. And every county, by the way, Hyrum, does not scan their votes, scan the ballots. It's different in each county. We have 44 counties. We have 44 different election processes, and that's part of the problem with this ranked choice voting is how you're going to merge those together. I think $25 to $40 million is actually a small amount. I think it could cost even more than that. And to what end? We've never yet figured out who benefits from this. Are the people of Idaho going to benefit from it? No, they're not going to benefit from it. They're just going to be more confused because it's going to take you 20 minutes to even cast a ballot because you're going to have 16 to 18 people in each county. Each one of those 4 different bubbles to fill in. That's crazy. You can't go and you're going to have to go and spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes just figuring out which bubble I want to fill in. And then you're confused. Well, wait a minute. Did my vote get thrown out? Yeah, a lot of your votes are going to get thrown out. It's not going to be one man, one vote. Your votes are going to get thrown out. And that is the other thing that I see a problem with this. Your votes get thrown out because you didn't understand that you had to fill in more bubbles to make your vote count all the way. I tried to come up with an analogy in the free market system for ranked choice voting. There is none. You don't go down to a car lot and say, well, my first choice is this, and my second choice is this, and my third. Oh, wait a minute. You don't do that. You go and you decide what you want to buy. Same thing, you go in the grocery store, you decide what you want to buy. You go to the ballot box, you decide, I'm going to vote for this person. But the way this scheme of ranked choice voting is, you have to kind of figure it out. You have jungle primary, you have 10 candidates running for the legislature or for the governor for that matter. It really cheats out, in a lot of cases, the Democrats, in a lot of cases, the independents, and in some cases, the Republicans. It's not fair to any party or any individual that wants to be a policymaker because people are going to get confused. Well, isn't there an independent on here? No, there's not an independent. Well, then the independents can't go and vote and register and file in the general election because this excludes them from doing that. So it is just a bad system. It's a jungle primary on steroids like California has, only at least they only have 2 people emerge from their primary. Then it's a little easier to figure it out in the general election. But this system is crazy.
Hyrum, I have heard quite a number of people say that they are concerned that as the complexity and steps asked increase in an election, that you will have fewer people participating in the election and there will be greater distrust because they are not clear 100% about how their votes are counted. What do you think about that?
So I think there's a couple of parts of that. One is you're not required to rank all the candidates, and your vote is never thrown out. So there are sometimes really good reasons why you wouldn't rank all of the candidates. For example, if you've got an election where you've got Superman, and then you've got doofus number 1, doofus number 2, and doofus number 3. you'd rank Superman first, and you may decide that you don't care which of the 3 remaining DUFI ends up as the winner, because you literally don't have a preference. All 3 of them are unacceptable to you. They're not only unacceptable, they are all equally bad. So you simply don't rate them. You might have a situation where you don't know any of the other 3. You know your neighbor because he's running for, or she's running for an office, so you go vote for her. You don't know the other 3, so you don't vote for them. That is an entirely reasonable thing to do as a voter. Is it ideal? No. Is that the way voters behave in real life? Yeah, sometimes. That's okay. In that scenario, your vote counts. They counted in the first round. And then if your neighbor happens to be the person that is removed first, your vote still counted. Your candidate just lost. There's nothing about your vote not counting. Your vote is not thrown out just because your candidate lost. Now, you didn't express a preference as it relates to the other 3 because you didn't have one. I think more choices and a system that accurately reflects voter preferences is a good thing, not a bad thing.
Except your vote is thrown out. If you vote for the person, the number 1 person you vote for, and that person doesn't get a majority, and you didn't want to vote for any of the other ones, or you didn't know you had to vote for any of the other ones, then your vote's thrown out because you didn't rank a choice. So your vote is thrown out.
No, you just didn't rank a choice.
There you go. Well, your vote doesn't count.
You didn't. You literally didn't vote. So that is the reason I prefer the term instant runoff, is because it more accurately describes the process. So you can imagine a scenario where we're going to say we're going to bring 4 in to the general election.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Let's use Eagle as an example. We had 4 people running for mayor, or they did. I don't live in Eagle, but they had 4 people.
And you could say, what we're going to do, it's important to us that the winner has a consensus, gets over 50%. So we're going to hold an election with these 4 candidates. And these 4 candidates are there. They're on the ballot. Everybody comes and votes for one. Nobody gets to 50%, so we're going to remove the last person. 2 weeks later, we're going to run another election with the top 3. So you bring everybody back to the polls, run another election with the top 3, and see if anybody gets to 50%. Nobody gets to 50%, so you remove the bottom person, and now you're left with the top 2, and you do an election with just those 2. The problem with that, obviously, is 1, it takes forever, and 2, it's super expensive to run 2, potentially 3 runoff elections to whittle down those 4 candidates until somebody gets to 50%. So what the instant runoff does is it provides all of that data and all of that information in one go. You sit down, and the question for you as a voter is, which of these 4 do you prefer? I prefer candidate number 1. I prefer Superman. If Superman's not available, I will take Wonder Woman. If Wonder Woman's not available, I'm good with Batman, and there's no way I'm voting for Joker because he's just terrible. And that would be the person that would be 4th, or just leave it blank. That functionally is the same as running that runoff, but it is cheaper and it is faster. If I leave the last 2 blank, what I am essentially doing is just not showing up at that runoff. Your vote isn't not being counted. Your vote isn't being thrown away. You're not showing up to vote as between those 2 candidates. Your votes for the candidates you voted for counted. You just aren't voting in this round of the runoff, which, okay.
You have to pose the question, could a candidate win an election without having the most votes? Yes. Under ranked choice voting, it's entirely possible. In fact, it's probable. Say the candidate you want is you want to put this in the first place vote, and then you didn't put in a second place vote. Then somebody else got. Say you get down to the third or fourth round. It's possible that the third or fourth round doesn't even have a majority. However, they have the majority of those that haven't been distinguished, or what do you call it? Disqualified? Of course. So a candidate could win without getting a majority vote.
Could you explain that again? Because I'm not following you. So we have 4 people, okay, and the fourth place person gets eliminated initially, and the 3 with the most first place votes moves on, and then they redistribute the second place votes for.
They only redistribute the second place votes that people voted for second place.
Sure, the only ones
if
that
somebody voted.
Sure.
If a candidate is your candidate that you wanted to see prevail, and they didn't get a majority,
right?
And then they're redistributed, and people didn't understand this ranked choice voting thing or whatever they did. Eventually, the candidate that wins did not get a majority. That happened in Alaska. The candidate that won did not get a majority.
Are you talking about the Palin race?
Yeah.
Okay, and it wasn't. So you're saying she didn't.
She got more votes than Palin did,
right?
But the Begich people didn't vote for Palin because they just didn't vote. They didn't put in a second choice.
Now, to be clear on the Alaska example, the Democrat who ultimately won through the ranked choice system received the majority. It received the most first place votes in the first round, and then also won the ranked choice.
It wasn't a majority. That's the point. It wasn't a majority of the votes.
Right, but in our current system, we don't have that rule either, right? Like you could have 3 people, and it's whoever just gets the most first place. So you could have somebody who got like 40%, and the other 2 get 30%.
That could be under our current system, yeah. But that rarely happens because you get a Republican and a Democrat. Once in a while, you'll get an independent,
sure,
or an unaffiliated that would file. That's the other thing. Unaffiliated can't even file after the ranked choice is up. After the jungle primary, unaffiliated, if they didn't get on the ballot, they're done.
Alaska. So let's talk about Sarah Palin. The Democrat in Alaska in the first round received 48.66% of the vote. I don't have these numbers memorized. They're sitting right here on my desk. There was a gentleman with like 5,000 votes. He was the bottom of the 3. Or bottom of the 4. When he was removed in the second round, the Democrat had 49.22%. Then Nick Begich is removed. Nick Begich is what would be referred to as a moderate Republican. The 3 candidates in the race at this point are Nick Begich, Sarah Palin, and the Democrat, who is Mary Peltola.
You're the first person that said her name. Everybody just like Begich, Palin, and the
Democrat.
Keep going. I'm sorry.
And to be clear, the Democrat was ahead throughout this process. Nick Begich's voters, as you would expect, most of them went to Sarah Palin. 67% of the people that voted for Nick Begich had identified Sarah Palin as their second choice. 12% of his voters had identified the Democrat, Mary Peltola, as their second place. So that's 12%. That by itself is more than enough to push her over that 50%. Then 22% of Nick Begich's voters didn't mark anybody. And here's what that is. That is moderate Republicans and independents who lean Republican saying, I am not going to vote for a Democrat, and I am not going to vote for Sarah Palin. It is an entirely rational decision by these voters. which, by the way, is irrelevant because even if you add those numbers to Sarah Palin's, she still doesn't win. Once that 12%, once that 7,477 Nick Begich voters voted for Mary Peltola, she's over the 50% and it's done. Republicans in Alaska did not have a ranked choice voting problem. Republicans in Alaska had a Sarah Palin problem. The problem was that she was profoundly popular with a very slight majority of Republican voters, but unpopular throughout the rest of the voters. It wasn't even particularly close. Sarah Palin ended up with 45%. Mary Peltola ended up at 49.96, 54%. It's a 10-point swing. Sarah Palin was never going to win Alaska. And all you have to do is pull out the numbers and look at them for a couple minutes, and you'll see Sarah Palin was never going to win Alaska. The idea that somehow this is a massive surprise, that this is the only time a Democrat has won in Alaska, just simply isn't the case.
If I may, I
Yeah.
would like to give Rod a second to
No.
respond if he wants.
Let me keep talking.
You'll get your shot.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Well, it is such a profound experience for the people of Alaska that they have on the ballot, let's eliminate this ranked choice voting, because for the first time since statehood, Don Young was their congressman, and he'd been there forever. I don't know about the particulars, and I don't even know about the numbers, but Peltola did not have the majority vote in the first round of voting, and who knows what it would have been if it had been a real election that occurs throughout the rest of the United States, except for
I do.
Well, fine. It's okay that you can pick out one race and say, oh, this is what's going to happen in Idaho. I don't want it to happen in Idaho. I want it to be a fair elections. I don't want to have to go through multiple rounds. I don't want to confuse people on what happens after the jungle primary. See, there's all kinds of things wrong with this ranked choice voting. The first one is this jungle primary. Again, it's a California system, except California's smarter. They only have 2 candidates appear in the general election. Then you have to go through this convoluted mess of voting and discarding people's votes because they don't understand it or they just don't want to vote for another person. And so you don't get a person that the majority of people want the first go around, or the most people want the first go around. You don't get that. You go through multiple rounds of voting, and that's not good. I can't find one example. I tried to find it. One example in a free market where you get ranked choice voting on making a purchase. Doesn't exist.
So, to the degree ranked choice voting in the free market is just what happens when I go to the grocery store and my preferred cereal is gone. And I go, you know what I really want is I really want let's do Fruit Loops, my wife's favorite. I really want Fruit Loops, but Fruit Loops isn't there. So given the fact that I can't have Fruit Loops, you know what? My next favorite is Frosted Flakes. Oh no, they're out of Frosted Flakes too. Now my choices is between Corn Flakes and Raisin Bran. Well, Raisin Bran is just garbage, so I will take the Corn Flakes. That is all you are doing. You are saying, this is my candidate. This is the person that I prefer. If this candidate isn't available, I'll take this one next. If this one isn't available and I'm stuck with a choice between these last 2, neither of which I really love, but as between the 2, I'll take that one. It is not that difficult, and we do this analysis all the time in real life.
Well, I'll take the Frosted Flakes, and I will stick with it. And if I don't get the Frosted Flakes, I'll come back later. You don't have that capability under ranked choice voting. You've got to pick a candidate that you don't know or you don't really want, and that's who you pick. There's a reason Reclaim Idaho is pushing this. Hyrum says that Idaho is being pushed too far to the right, having given no examples of what is too far to the right. But there's a reason Reclaim Idaho wants this. They want to move Idaho to the left. That's what they're after. And that's what they're after. And they have all this nonsense.
And Rod and me and Butch Otter, I love the fact that we have had a series of conservative, common sense Republican governors and a supermajority in the state house for the last 20 years. I think it's great. I think it should continue.
So why do you want to upset it with the ranked choice voting? That's the question.
Because this system that we have right now is fundamentally flawed. As Butch Otter recognizes, as do I. Neither of us are Democrats. Neither of us are leftists. Neither of us want to see the Democratic Party take over the state. There is a problem with our system. And if we don't fix it, it's going to continue to get worse.
Well, I'd reject that notion. I don't think there's a problem with our system. I think the people of Idaho are fairly happy with our system. That's the reason there's only 11 Democrats in the Idaho House of Representatives and only 5 or 6 Democrats in the House. Is that a problem with our system? I don't think it is. I think once in a while you'll get somebody like Herndon up there who beat out Jim Woodworth, and then the next year Jim beat him. You had the same thing in Rexburg. You had Ron, Nate took out. He got beat, and the next year he come back and beat Rydulch. Or was it Rydulch? Is that her name? I forget.
Raybold.
Raybold. And you get those kind of things, and that kind of thing will continue to happen. People are generally very happy, I think, with the system of government we have in Idaho. They understand the proper role of government, and ranked choice voting will upset that.
The 4,618 independents who did not get to help decide whether Britt Raybold or Ron Nate was going to represent them would disagree.
I would hazard a guess that they wouldn't.
Like they didn't.
They're
care.
probably happy about. Well, they got to vote in a general election, and if they wanted to participate, they could have registered in one party or another.
I think that horse has been well and goodly beaten. I don't understand why we'd be trying to incentivize everybody to join our party.
Well, I would be happy if as many people wanted to join our party as desires to, because I think our philosophy of government is the best philosophy of government.
Yeah.
However, this is not about the Republican Party, because Democrats are not always supporting this because they understand the problems with ranked choice voting. I think you're going to find some Democrats saying, "Oh, wait a minute, this is really going to mess us up."
Yeah, absolutely.
And it will. And in some districts, it will. So why there's not a problem with today's system. Now, of course, Hirum's going to pick out a couple thousand people. I don't know how many, 800 or 900 that are didn't register with the Republican Party. They might not be happy. One of them. Well, I'm going to go into that. But I have relatives that live in Rexburg.
There you go.
Yeah.
Listen, it comes full circle. Gentlemen, we've talked about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Do either of you have a big piece that you feel like is missing? And Rod, I really want to make sure we are able to cover ranked choice voting as much as possible, because this is one really big issue for you, in that the proposition in general you're saying is deceptive, bait and switch. Do you feel like we've articulated your position sufficiently?
Well, it is a deceptive bait and switch, because most people that signed the initiative thought they were signing just for open primaries. They didn't know that it was going to get into this jungle primary situation, and that it was going to go and have this ranked choice thing. See, that is the biggest problem, I think, is how confusing this is, how it's going to take away the integrity of the election. Really, it's going to take away your chance to understand who you're voting for in the second or third, fourth rounds, because that's not what people are used to doing. They're not used. Now, you mentioned the Eagle thing. it's not even the same example, because that was, okay, nobody got a majority, so we go into a runoff. The runoff was 30 days later when you actually had an election. This is not what this is. This is jungle primary, 13, 14 people be on the ballot. Oh, okay, I'm going to pick, wait a minute. How many do I pick? I pick 4. I pick 4 candidates to go to the general election. And then I got to work through that process. You're going to have 60 or 70 bubbles you have to fill in. And how you going to manage that? I think it's going to be difficult, and I think it's going to be a problem. And I hope we don't get there.
Hyrum, I think your position of too far to the right, that a closed primary system is inherently flawed, that you are a conservative that thinks we need reform, has been made clear. Is there anything that you feel like we've missed?
I am confident the initiative will allow more voters to have more options, more debate, and better representation.
Gentlemen, Rod,
and Rod feels differently.
Yeah.
I feel
that
differently.
Is the point that I think we all can agree on. Rod feels differently.
I feel differently. Better representation. What that implies is that there's something wrong with the policies that are currently in place. And Hyrum has had, how long have we been going here? An hour and a half? I don't know. Never explained one single policy that they didn't agree with, that Idaho has in the law, or that's been signed by the governor by executive order or otherwise. However, Reclaim Idaho, they do have issues. They would like to impose lots of different things because they're more to the left. So the problem is, there isn't a problem with our system today. And the people of ranked choice voting, they're not articulating a problem. They're trying to say open primaries, and that's a deception. It is not open primaries. It is a jungle primary moving towards a convoluted system of having to pick between 60 or 70 bubbles.
It'll be the most awesome thing since sliced bread.
I appreciate you both. I really do. Hyrum, you drove 4 hours here. You're gonna have to drive 4 hours home. Rod, it's a working day. You already came in for an interview, both of you.
Thank you.
I deeply appreciate you and everything you're trying to do for Idaho.
Well, I think it's been I enjoy visiting with Hyrum. He's just wrong on this issue, and and there's nothing I thought I might get him convinced, but no, I didn't. I didn't get him convinced. He's not gonna go there.
And Matt, let me say, you have done amazing work. Anybody that is really serious about this should go listen to your podcast. You have done great work bringing people from both sides in, asking good questions. I really appreciate it.
Hey.
It's a benefit for the entire state.
No problem at all.
Well, I agree with that. I agree that
We got you guys agreeing.
yeah, we're agreeing. We're agreeing. Yeah, we're agreeing. We're agreeing that the ranch is a good vehicle. You're a good moderator, discussion, leading of a discussion. I didn't think there was ever much hope that I was going to convince Hyrum to be on the right side of this thing, but I thought we could have a good discussion, and I think we have had a good discussion.
Yes, absolutely. And again, you guys, I still don't know what the right thing to do is. I think anybody who's watched this, you got a lot of information that's going to be hard to flush out. So thank you for contributing to the great state we all live in.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.